YouTube, what's going on? It's Javo back, and I wanted to show you guys something that I just added to the new editor, and it's going to help you guys with your roster making process. I'm always trying to find ways to make it faster to create rosters. Creating rosters is a lot of work, especially when you're doing them the right way and you're really getting detailed and watching highlights and looking at stats and making sure the players look perfect, you know, and all that stuff. But that's what I like to do, so it takes me a long time. But there are a lot of rosters that have been made. There are teams that you've made in the past with the old editor, and you might want to use those. So I'm going to show you guys something that I did that it was in the old one, but not with season mode, and really not tested that great, in my opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a roster that I was making a few years ago that I never finished, but I have a lot of teams on here that I might want to use, right? One thing you're going to notice that I've added in here are a few icons. So now you can easily tell on here which of these teams are user controlled. That's brand new. You can see it here. And if I go to one of my teams, let's go to the Buffalo Bills, you're going to see that this is a user controlled team, right? And when you go to change anything about the Bills, you can go ahead and take them on or turn them off, and that's going to show you a quick indicator that the team is yours, right? So I'm doing things like this to add that UI experience, to make the editor feel more quality, right? When you're using it, you want to know what you're doing, and as I use it, as I test it, I'm adding more things, and you know, it's going to take a while to finish, but it's worth it in the end. If you're doing it quality and the experience is better and the less bugs we have, the better the experience, you're going to be happy. I'm going to be happy. So I'm putting things like this into it. So going back to the Bills, you know, I created the Bills a few years ago when they had Watkins, Robert Woods. They were a decent team, actually. But if you look at the team, they're all here. And let's say I want to take this team that I made and I want to throw them into my brand new season, right? So let's say you've gone into All Pro Football, okay, and you've created 8 teams, because you have to create 8 teams. I don't care if 7 of the teams are just, you know, quickly made through the computer, just start all the way through. And then you have your one team, and just go into the game, create a brand new roster, 8 teams without any hex editing, any editing on here, and then you go into start a brand new season, right? So you're going to start a brand new season with I did it with the Blackbirds, and I'm going to show you that in a second. But you go ahead and you create your season, right? And or you start your season. And when your file is loaded and it goes to the season schedule, at that point you save your season file. It's going to end in FXG, okay? F is in Frank, X-ray, G is in gangster. And it is, you want to bring that to your computer, okay? So what you want to do here is you want to open up your file, your roster, or it could be a roster file, it could be online, offline, season mode, whatever you have. You can go to any team and you can basically export it. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You go File, you go Export, Roster File, and you can choose between current team or all teams, okay? I'm going to have the ability to do Xbox and PS3, you know, depending on which one you're on, it's going to be able to convert from one to the other. So I'm planning on working on that as part of the release. But those aren't set yet, so they're just here as placeholders. So what you're going to want to do is, let's say I want to go ahead and export the Bills, just the Bills. I'm going to send them to my desktop. I'm going to hit OK, and the file was created, bills.txt. But let's say I also want to, and you could do it for any team. I can go to the Jaguars, or I can do the Jaguars, and I can export. This is the team that I had made back then. Export, same thing, jaguars.txt. Let's go ahead and do the Seahawks. One more team here. Seahawks, export, current team. Okay, exported. Now, if you want to do all your, let's say all these teams here you want to export, you can do that. It's very, very easy. You go to the same thing, export all teams. It's going to do all teams in one huge file, and there you go. Now let's go ahead and go back to, and you don't have to worry about, one thing I'm going to tell you, you don't have to worry about if you export all teams. I'm going to show you now, you can control what you import, okay? And I'm going to show you how that works. So let's go ahead and open up my season file that I had just talked about. And it's the Blackbird. It's going to ask you, because remember, it's a file straight from the system. It's going to say, do you want to rebuild? You have to rebuild, basically. You can't hit yes, no, cancel. You have to rebuild. You hit OK, it rebuilds. Okay. When it rebuilds, though, it's going to save a copy of that file, right? So wherever you have your files, you're going to see a backup copy. It's going to look like this, .back 1. And you want to make sure that right here where it says auto backup files, right here where it says auto backup files, you want to make sure that that's checked. That's the one that's going to back up files every time the editor saves, whether you're rebuilding or you're importing or you're creating your franchise files, whatever you're doing that saves the file. Instead of just overwriting your file, you want to make sure auto backup is checked. It's right here. Okay. So now we're going to go back into my file, and you can see that my team is the Blackbirds. One thing you're going to notice here as well is this locked icon. Okay. And what this means is that you can't touch that team. It could be because the roster, let's say you opened up a regular roster file that had one team on it, and the rest of the teams you didn't make yet. Well, in the editor, those 7 teams that you didn't create in the game, they're going to show up as like weird characters and stars and weird things, right? So those are going to be locked down, because if you open up anything in the editor with those teams, they'll break. Plus, they're not created, so you don't need to worry about them anyway. So I'm going to lock those down, okay? I'm also on here, this is my season, right? These are all of my 8 teams right here, right? But you can't control anybody on the created teams except for the team that you picked, which I picked the Blackbirds, right? You can't control any of these guys. You can't change to those, but you can control everyone over here minus this. So you have 24 teams. I'm going to say it again. So you have 24 teams. You have 24 total teams. 23 are CPU and 1 controlled team. Okay, the one that I picked was Blackbirds. So if I want to go through the season, I want to change my team around, I can do that. I can go to any one of these teams minus, well, any team that's not locked. I can go to any one, and I can click on the user. If you click on it here, it's going to say you can't, because you can only have 1 at a time in the season file. Okay, so you could reset them all, and then you can click on this one. Now I'm controlling the Federals. Okay, I can't do it with the Legends because the Legends are being used by the Blackbirds. So when you create a season, your created team uses a spot from the CPU, and in this case it's using the Legends. Okay, so when you create your rosters, you're not going to want to mess with the Legends, right? Because the Legends are, you can't use them in the season. Right now they're just sitting there as a ghost. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But right now is where you build your roster. Okay, before you convert this into a franchise, okay, this is when you build your roster. But what I wanted to show you guys was that you can easily import teams that you've created. So if I want to go to the Sailors, okay, and I want to import my team, remember how we created the all teams file? Well, the way that it works is that it only imports, let's go ahead and get rid of that. It only imports whatever teams you have that match, right? your file with this, right? So if I took that entire all teams file and I try to import that, it's only going to touch teams that match the same name, right? So if the name is Jaguars, then it will touch them and it will update them. But all these other teams here, those aren't in my file, so they won't get touched. But let's say I want to do the Jaguars, and then I want to do the Bills. And who else did we do? We did the Seahawks, right? Okay. And we did the Rams. Let's go ahead and make the Rhinos the Rams, right? Now, when I change the name, this right here is just changing to the Rams because I've uploaded what you do here. And I know I'm telling you guys a lot, so just bear with me. I've uploaded a logo in the past that I wanted to sync with the name Rams, right? So I can have a name called, you know, Pigs, and I can take any file online, any logo, and I can upload it here. So when I type the word Pigs, like if I type Americans, right, it's going to change to the Americans because there's a file that I have uploaded that's called the Americans, right? But we're going to make these the Rams, St. Louis Rams, right? So now let's go ahead and import. Let's do it twofold. Let's do an import roster, and I'm going to go ahead and import one that I've already created, which was the Seahawks. You don't have to be on the team, by the way. I'm on the Rams right now. Doesn't matter what team you're on. It's gonna import. It should import based on the total roster. So I'm going to do Seahawks, and I'm going to hit yes to proceed. You're going to see a number of different notifications because I'm using it for testing purposes right now. And then it's going to close the entire thing. It's going to close the entire file and reopen it. You don't really see it, but it does everything all over again. And now the Seahawks should, in theory, be the ones that you exported. So if we go to the depth chart, and I always get nervous with this because there's always some weird things that can pop up, but it looks like the team is here. Remember the team that I made in the old roster a few years ago, the old NFL roster I was creating. You got all your guys here. And let's just make sure they look okay. Let me see if I see any weird characters or weird things happening here. I mean, they look pretty good. And if I go to Russell Wilson, because I know Russell Wilson, we want to edit him. Let's just make sure that he has everything the way that it should be, and it looks pretty good. Looks pretty solid, right? So now we imported the Seahawks. That's one team. Now, if I want to import all of the teams that I exported that match the ones I have in here, remember that, you go to import roster, you go to all teams, hit open. It's going to say it's going to update the current roster with the players in the text file. Only teams stated in text file will be affected. Are you sure you wish to proceed? You hit yes. And now it's going to go through the import process. It's importing every single team that matches up, every single player that matches up where the position equals the position. And it is going to overwrite everything. And now it's closing it, reopening it. And in theory, if we cross our fingers, we should be able to see the right players here now. Okay. So there we go. See that? So that's the way it looks when you import a team. Now you can see everybody on the Jaguars here. You can see that they look good, right? So now what I want to do is I'm going to import another roster. Let me just show you the Bills real quick. I want to make sure this came through okay. So Shady McCoy, he looks good. Let's see if anybody else has any weird characters here. Like I said, sometimes it breaks. I'm going to go ahead and close this file. I'm going to reopen it because I'm just testing it. Let's make sure it works okay. And let's see if the players still look healthy here. So, you know, I'm looking for any weird names. The names are a big thing. I want to make sure they don't get jumbled up. I want to make sure the depth chart looks good. Let's go to the Rams. They look pretty good here. Everybody's looking pretty good. So I'm happy with this, right? Now let's go ahead and open. Let's say you have a roster from somebody you know, and I have one here. I have an old 98 Vikings roster. Okay. I don't want to save that. I didn't make any changes, but so here I have the Vikings, right? So the Vikings roster has the all-time, or the 98 Vikings here. Okay, now this is an online file, and you're going to see that these teams here, you can't touch them. This is what I was talking about earlier. They have all these stars. So this roster right here was literally just one team created, and that's it. So the other created teams are broken. They're not going to show up. Okay. So let's go back to our Vikings here, and remember, this is an online, which I have had this icon here, online roster. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and export this out. Current team to my desktop, Norseman.txt. It's going to overwrite. If you have another file in there called Norseman.txt, it's just going to overwrite it, so just be careful with that. And then now I'm going to go ahead and load my season file. I don't want to change anything with the file I had open. So now what we can do is, let's say the Federals we want to make the Norseman. I think that's how we spelled it. Let me just double check real quick. Desktop. Norseman. Okay, so that looks good, right? So now let's go ahead and import roster. One last time here. Desktop Norseman. Okay. Are you sure you wish to proceed? Yes. So now, I know this might sound a little bit, you know, boring, mundane, whatever, but this is all about accuracy. If you don't get it accurate, the file breaks. It can freeze in your Xbox or your PS3. The players aren't what you want. Everything gets jumbled up. And I mean, you guys who've used this, you know how frustrating it is to create a roster and then all of a sudden the roster is corrupted because of some weird thing. So all this stuff takes time, it takes testing, and it takes a lot of detail-oriented like mindset to get this thing figured out. So now we have the 98 Vikings in here. So if I wanted to quickly create an all-time, and shout out to my boy Destro, check out his rosters. I'll put a link in the description here. He's got all-time greatest rosters out for the NFL. He does a really good job. They're online files, so you can take them online. But if you want to take these and, you know, manipulate them and make them your own, you can. But for online, he does a really good job. I mean, I like to add the faces. I like to do a little bit more with what he does here. But for online, this is the best you're going to get. Now I can go in here and I can change these to the Vikings. Right? I can make it say Vikings. Okay? So yeah, so now you have the Vikings in here. Let's just take a look, because I am testing this while I'm showing you guys. Now we have the 98 Vikings, which are here, okay? And they're going to be playing against everyone else. So let's go to the schedule. Let's take a look. So check this out. You got the Vikings playing against the Minutemen, right? And that's the user control team, right? I should probably add it here too. I might want to add these icons in here. I think I'm going to do that. I'm a freak with this stuff. But these icons, I want to show them here. I do show them up here. I show them everywhere else. But I may change that around because I want to show you guys. But you know, you can see that very easily that all this stuff is now being added, and you can quickly, like what I'd love to do is take some of the rosters that have been made and quickly just import them into my season. I might play like an all-time NFL teams roster and play that season. in franchise mode on top of it, right? So when you go to your team stats, you could see what your teams are doing. You know, you can go to the Bills and you can look at these all-time rosters with, you know, and you can mix it up. You can do some all-time, but the point here is that creating rosters is very difficult, okay? And if you're not careful and you don't have a lot of time, or if you don't have a lot of time, you might just want to import some rosters and some teams. And this is the way you're going to do it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm probably going to, you know, point this to my tutorials when I create the final tutorial list of videos when I release this thing, because this is really a tutorial for importing, exporting rosters in the new editor. So let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Peace.